Hello, everyone. This is Anikai, and you are listening to the EnglishPod community. Today, I want to talk about my evening routine, and I will also share some fluency tips with short story examples. I usually finish my work at around 6 p.m. After that, I take a short walk near my house. Walking in the evening helps me relax and clear my mind. One evening, I met my neighbor Daniel. He asked me, "What do you usually do after work?" I answered, "I usually take a walk and then go home for tea." This is a simple conversation, but it helped me practice speaking naturally. Here is your first fluency tip. Talk about your daily routine again and again. Repeating familiar topics helps you speak more smoothly. After my walk, I go home and make a cup of tea. While the water is boiling, I try to think in English. I describe my actions in my mind. For example, I say, "I am boiling water. I am making tea. I am getting ready to study." This small habit trains your brain to think in English. This is fluency tip number 2. Describe your actions in real time. Let me share another short story. Yesterday evening, my friend Emma called me. She asked, "Are you busy?" I said, "No, I am just having my tea and planning my evening study." The sentence was simple, but I spoke confidently. You do not need difficult words to sound fluent. This is fluency tip number 3. Use simple and clear sentences. After tea, I usually spend some time reading. Sometimes I read a short story, and sometimes I read a small article. One evening, I read a story about a traveler. After finishing, I tried to explain the story aloud. At first, it was difficult, but slowly I became more comfortable. This is another helpful habit. Read something short, then explain it in your own words. Around 7 p.m., I usually start preparing dinner. Cooking is a great opportunity to practice English because there are many simple actions you can describe. For example, I wash vegetables, cut onions, and cook rice. While doing these tasks, I speak quietly to myself. I say things like, "I am cutting the vegetables carefully," or "Now I am adding some salt." This kind of self-talk improves your speaking speed without pressure. One evening, my younger cousin was visiting me. He heard me talking while cooking and asked, "Who are you talking to?" I smiled and said, "I am practicing English." He laughed, but later he tried it too. This is fluency tip number 1 in this section. Use everyday activities like cooking to practice natural speech. After dinner, I like to sit for a few minutes and reflect on my day. This is another useful habit. I ask myself simple questions such as, "What did I do today?" or "What was interesting today?" Then I answer these questions in English. One night, I remembered that I helped a colleague solve a problem. I explained the situation aloud. I said, "Today, my colleague could not understand a report, so I helped him step by step." Speaking about real experiences helps you build confidence. This is fluency tip number 2. Talk about your real day, not imaginary situations. Later in the evening, I often practice listening. I play a short English audio clip and listen carefully. After listening, I try to repeat the main idea in my own words. One time, I listened to a short talk about healthy habits. After listening, I summarized it by saying, "The speaker said we should sleep early, drink water, and exercise regularly." This exercise improves both listening and speaking together. This is fluency tip number 3. Listen to short content and summarize it immediately. Sometimes I also spend time reviewing vocabulary. I do not memorize long lists. Instead, I choose 3 or 4 words and create sentences with them. For example, one evening I learned the words relax, prepare, and focus. I made sentences like, "I relax after dinner," "I prepare my notes," and "I focus on pronunciation." Creating your own sentences helps you remember words better. This becomes fluency tip number 4. Learn fewer words, but use them in your own sentences. Before the night gets late, I also practice speaking for 1 minute without stopping. I choose a small topic such as my dinner, my plans, or my favorite show. At first, I make small mistakes, but I keep speaking. One evening, I talked about a movie I watched. I described the characters, the story, and my opinion. When I finished, I noticed that I spoke more smoothly than before. This is fluency tip number 5. Speak continuously for 1 minute without worrying about mistakes. Finally, I spend the last part of my evening organizing my plans for tomorrow. I say my plans aloud. For example, I might say, tomorrow I will wake up early, finish my tasks, and practice English again. Saying your plans helps you use future tense naturally. This simple habit strengthens your grammar in a practical way. These evening activities are not complicated, but they create daily opportunities to practice English naturally. When you combine real-life actions with speaking, your fluency improves step by step, and you start feeling more comfortable expressing your thoughts. Around 8:30 p.m., I usually move to my desk and spend some time writing. Writing is often ignored, but it can strongly support speaking fluency. I do not write long essays. Instead, I write a short paragraph about something specific. For example, one evening I wrote about a conversation I had at a store. The shop assistant asked me if I needed help, and I explained what I was looking for. After writing the paragraph, I read it aloud. When you read your own writing, you connect thinking, reading, and speaking together. This is fluency tip number 1 in this section. Write a short paragraph, then read it aloud slowly and clearly. On another evening, I tried a different exercise. I looked around my room and described everything I saw. I said, there is a lamp on the table. The chair is near the window. My notebook is open. At first, it felt too simple, but it helped me practice describing objects naturally. Then I expanded the description. I added more details such as color, size, and position. This built my confidence. This becomes fluency tip number 2. Describe your surroundings and gradually add more details. Sometimes I also practice asking and answering questions by myself. For example, I ask, why do I like evenings? Then I answer, I like evenings because they are calm and quiet. Another question might be, what helps me relax? I answer, listening to soft sounds helps me relax. This method trains your brain to respond quickly. One evening, I tried this exercise for 10 minutes, and I noticed my responses became faster. This is fluency tip number 3. Create your own questions and answer them naturally. Later, I often watch a short English clip, but I do not watch passively. I pause the video and repeat one sentence in my own way. For example, if the speaker says, I had a busy day, I might say, my day was very busy today. This small change helps you build flexibility in speaking. One night, I practiced this technique with 3 short sentences. After repeating them, I felt more comfortable using similar patterns. This is fluency tip number 4. Listen to a sentence and restate it using different words. Another useful habit in my evening routine is storytelling practice. I choose a small memory from my past and tell it like a short story. One evening, I talked about a rainy day when I forgot my umbrella. I explained where I was going, what happened, and how I felt. At first, my story was short, but then I added more details. I described the weather, the street, and the people around me. This exercise helps expand your speaking ability. This is fluency tip number 5. Tell short personal stories and slowly add more details. Sometimes I also focus on pronunciation. I choose a few sentences and repeat them slowly. I pay attention to stress and rhythm. For example, I might say, "This evening is peaceful," and repeat it 3 times with different emphasis. One evening, I practiced for 15 minutes, and I noticed my speech sounded clearer. This becomes fluency tip number 6. Repeat short sentences slowly to improve clarity. Before ending my evening, I like to do a reflection exercise. I think about what I practiced and say it aloud. For example, I might say, "Today I practiced describing my room and telling a short story." Speaking about your learning process strengthens memory. One night, I also added my feelings. I said, "I felt more confident today." This builds motivation. This is fluency tip number 7. Speak about your learning progress. Another helpful practice is imagining a conversation. I pretend I'm talking to a friend and explain something. For example, I imagine explaining my favorite hobby. I describe why I like it, when I do it, and how it helps me. This mental conversation prepares you for real situations. One evening, I imagined explaining my weekend plans. The next day, when someone asked me about my plans, I answered more easily. This is fluency tip number 8. Imagine conversations before they happen. Sometimes I also read a short dialogue and change the roles. If the dialogue has 2 speakers, I speak both parts. I change my voice slightly and continue without stopping. This builds rhythm and confidence. One night, I practiced a short dialogue about meeting a friend. After repeating it, I felt more comfortable using similar expressions. This is fluency tip number 9. Practice both sides of a short dialogue. Another part of my routine includes timing myself. I set a timer for 2 minutes and speak about one topic. I do not stop even if I make mistakes. The goal is to keep speaking. One evening, I talked about my favorite place to relax. I paused sometimes, but I continued. When the timer ended, I realized I had spoken more than usual. This is fluency tip number 10. Use a timer and speak continuously. Before going to sleep, I calm my mind and review a few phrases quietly. I do not force myself to memorize. I simply repeat them naturally. This relaxed repetition helps long-term memory. One night, I repeated 3 useful phrases, and the next day, I used them in conversation. This shows how small practice can be powerful. My evening routine is not about studying hard. It is about creating many small speaking moments. Each activity connects to real life. When you describe, imagine, retell, and reflect, your fluency grows naturally. You do not need perfect grammar. You only need consistent practice and simple ideas. That brings us to the end of today's episode. I hope my evening routine and these fluency tips with story examples help you build your own speaking habits. Remember, you do not need long study hours. Small, consistent practice every evening can make a big difference in your confidence and fluency. Try 1 or 2 of these ideas today and keep going step by step. Thank you for listening to the EnglishPod community. This is Anikai. Keep practicing, keep speaking, and I will see you in the next episode.